Two quick things before this video starts. I now have a Twitter and a Discord. I'm not even really sure how much I'm going to use it, but feel free to join. If you guys misbehave, I'm going to take away your Discord privileges or whatever. So if you guys want to join, go ahead. If not, I don't really care. Not much will change. I'm just going to use it for announcements and just general banter. Links will be in the description. So thank y'all, and on to the video. Exploiting. It's a guilty pleasure many Roblox players take part in, whether it be to troll, to have fun, to gain an advantage, or to potentially help other players. It has been a part of Roblox since its inception, for the most part. This video is going to do what I have never seen before on YouTube, which is categorizing and documenting the history of exploiting on Roblox. First, I'll be discussing the very beginning of Roblox exploiting using DLLs, cheat engine, and some of the other various odd things that happened around that time, including the 2012 April Fool's hack. Next, I'll be discussing the rise of script executors on Roblox. Although it is the shortest period, there is still a lot to say about the birth of script executors, including the original bytecode executors and the whole process behind that, and I think it's integral to learning about the later parts of Roblox exploiting. After that, I'll be talking about the Golden Age, or at least what I consider to be the Golden Age. This is a period when script executors were stable, popular, and only became more and more useful as time went on. These include exploits from the early part of this period, mostly being 7 and RC7, all the way to the later part of the period, including Synapse and Proto Smasher. And the final period will be the post-FE period, covering filtering-enabled hacks, remote abuse, and although they're not actually exploits, server-side, because I feel like their importance has to be mentioned in this case. And without further ado, this is a mostly accurate history of Roblox exploiting. The oldest form of Roblox exploiting, if you could even call it that then, was using cheat engine, a very powerful tool for editing memory values and various other things within games through connecting to the specific app. Although cheat engine is a universal thing, it can be used on almost any game you can think of. Its impact on Roblox is particularly significant because of the many videos that were published back in the day showcasing things like point glitches, stat changing, and other forms of very basic exploiting at the time. Throughout the early period of exploiting, Roblox constantly created measures to stop cheat engine from functioning on Roblox, including preventing the actual game from launching if you had it open, which then again led to a cat and mouse game between multiple different copies of cheat engine with slightly different security signatures or something that actually ended up bypassing Roblox's detection. This period is very hard to document though, because most of the things that came out of it were either private or hard to find, especially on YouTube. You can find videos from the 2010-2011 period of crazy things going on that weren't possible with cheat engine value changes or anything like that. There's some serious stuff going on here that was probably entirely private at the time and maybe only known by one individual. There seems to have been this fairly popular DLL-injected exploit at the time that resembles the modern-day Dex Explorer, wherein you could actually insert objects into the workspace and create your own scripts that you could then run other scripts from inside of the actual game. It seemed to have been very powerful, and although I have no idea when it was patched or when it finally stopped working, it seems to have been very prevalent between around 2011 and 2012. And of course, you can't forget one of the most infamous events in Roblox history being, of course, the 2012 April Fool's hack. I'm not going to go super in-depth into it because there's 1,000 different places you can read about it on, as well as numerous videos discussing what actually happened and who may have been behind it. But the gist of it is that on April 1st, 2012, a bunch of crazy stuff happened where a few users were able to gain access to Roblox's actual administration platform through various backdoor methods, as well as posting many let's just say, odd banners throughout the website, as well as hacking into many accounts, or at least posing as many of the Roblox admins and posting gross and disgusting things onto the forums. It really is unfortunate that it is so tough to document this period of Roblox exploiting, because I do find it very interesting. There was a lot of unique and crazy things happening at this time that, due to the technology of the era, there just wasn't much of it being documented. However, the next periods of Roblox exploiting should certainly have a lot more concrete information behind them, allowing me to actually place things in chronological order, unlike with this past section, which was a lot more freeform in terms of where I placed things on the timeline. This period of Roblox exploiting was truly setting the stage for the Golden Age, which is why this period is so short. It lies in between this empty vastness of just unknown exploits and bumps up against the greatest era of Roblox exploiting. However, the importance of this era cannot be understated because it's where users on Roblox discovered the ability for script execution. Back in 2012, and technically before, bytecode was discovered as a way to inject code into the Roblox client in 2012 by a user named Necrobumpist. He then handed this information to Roblox, where he discovered an article discussing some of the bugs with the base version of Lua Roblox was using, which was posted actually around 2008. Essentially, this could give users elevated privileges in games and use bytecode to execute basically anything they want, provided they knew how to use it. One could essentially manipulate server-side properties by disassembling standard Lua code into its bytecode format, which could then be loaded into the game upon joining. There's actually a GitHub repository for some form of system that would actually translate normal Lua into its bytecode version, which I actually found pretty interesting. Now, I don't know if bytecode is an explanation for those exploits I showed in the previous section that seemed way too advanced for their time, using potentially private methods only known by one person. However, after it was discovered, it was quickly patched out by Roblox on August 2nd, 2012, where they actually made an entire blog post about it, detailing how it worked and what they did to solve it. I'll link that in the description if you want to know more. Unfortunately though, this broke many popular games at the time, most notably being Galleons, which actually used Lua bytecode as a form of obfuscation. And for those of you who are unaware, code obfuscation basically does what the word obfuscation means. It turns code into a hard to understand mess that can be de-obfuscated only when the person who obfuscated it knows how it was obfuscated in the first place. I know I said that word a lot, but there you go. In around 2013, on the exploiting website Vermilion, a hack called Stigma was released, shown above. Essentially, it was one of the first actual script executors of its time. It wasn't perfect, and it ended up getting patched, but it basically began the explosion of the Roblox exploiting quote-unquote industry, and it brought a lot of new users to the scene, which ends up translating into new talent a few years down the line, which you'll see in the next section. Moving into 2015 and 2016, as Roblox exploded in popularity, it became a lot more common, and it's a lot easier to find things that were going on around that time, as well as to document specific instances of specific exploits being used. If you're an exploiter, you remember this period fondly, with 7, RC7, Elysian, all kinds of crazy exploits pushing the boundaries further into Roblox exploiting with script executing and all kinds of other crazy things happening at that time. This section is going to actually talk about chronology and how these exploits came out over time, as well as the methods that were discovered that enabled script execution in an efficient way in the first place. Now, before I really get into this, let me just preface by saying a couple things about this era. A very popular exploiting forum known as Vermilion is actually really where most of this stuff started coming from. Vermilion has been around for many years, but it started to take off between 2015 and 2016, where it became the hub for a lot of scripts, scripters, and script executors themselves. After the patching of Lua bytecode, there were still some ways to execute scripts, albeit they were very low-powered, prone to crashing, and often could only execute on the client side. However, with the discovery of what is known as proto-conversion in the summer of 2015, everything changed. a user named Chronology, I'm going to assume is how it's pronounced, figured out that by using the regular vanilla Lua compiler to generate a, quote, Lua function prototype, then modifying it to be compatible with Roblox's virtual machine, which is basically how they run Lua within Roblox, you could essentially execute any script you want, which he then dubbed proto-conversion, and it was basically the foundation for many of the most famous early Golden Age exploits, such as 7, Elysian, RC7, etc. Although it's hard to pin down an exact release date for all of these exploits, from what I could find, obviously 7 was created sometime in 2015, and the original RC7 came out in sometime in 2014. However, this was the birth of modern exploit scripting, with the advent of far more stable and regularly updated script executors. Although I use stable lightly in comparison to the exploits we have today, the scripts themselves actually started to become far more advanced, as you could see in the intro to this section. Yes, there are the typical map destroyers, but there are also very well made and well animated, I guess, anime based scripts and stuff like that I always remember seeing when I was younger that were actually really well made. Combined with the fact that Roblox was just exploding at this time, from what I believe to be Dan TDM starting to make videos on Roblox, exploiting simultaneously exploded in its popularity and its frequency of use. This will be more important later, but as Roblox usually is, they don't catch up to trends like this for quite a few years. Starting in about early 2016, or at least from what I could find, Roblox started implementing two major blockages to the current exploiting market, one being retcheck and the other being memcheck. Retcheck standing for return check, I believe at least, that's the closest I could find, and memcheck standing for memory check. This basically bricked a lot of exploits that I believe, bear with me here, I'm not an expert, used actual snippets of Roblox code within their actual structure. Anyways, this basically led to, even if you had a bypass at the time, you could only use your exploit for like 2 minutes before it broke. Of course, we eventually got around this, and this kind of stuff doesn't even happen anymore, hence why I stated that newer exploits are far more stable than even the quote-unquote stable exploits of this time. Moving into 2017, arguably the most popular Roblox exploit of all time was released, Synapse. Back then called Raindrop, it was a Lua wrapper exploit. And although from what I've seen it has moved back and forth, at least in its early periods between Lua wrapping and proto-conversion, today it still stands as a Lua wrapper as far as I'm concerned. Lua wrapping, while first discovered and actually executed around the same time as proto-conversion, didn't see widespread popularity until 2017 just about, when Synapse/Raindrop was the first to actually use it. Another exploit that came out around the same time named Seraph also used this same concept to achieve script execution, and it was actually far more powerful and ended up becoming the dominant form of execution later on and into today. Because of the nature of Lua wrapping, patching these exploits was actually pretty challenging, especially at the time. They were able to survive most security updates that Roblox threw at them, which, although retcheck and memcheck came before, it definitely includes things at that level. Anyways, moving through towards 2018, more and more exploits started getting released, although many were dime a dozen pieces of shit. A lot of them were actually very high quality, including, Proto Smasher, Synapse, Cerberus, EX7, and multitudes of other actually pretty good script executors at the time. However, this all came crashing down after, for the most part, a single incident that sparked the powder keg for Roblox exploiting. Picture this. It's a sunny, warm 4th of July 2018, or probably sometime before, and your daughter's on the couch playing a game of, Adopt and Raise a Cute Baby. And then you see something strange. A Roblox character is penetrating your daughter's character on Roblox. It's disgusting, and you throw everything down in shock, and you run over to take the iPad away from her. You're unbelievably shocked at what you've just seen, but what you've done is inadvertently brought down the world of exploiting for thousands and thousands of exploit users. On July 4th, 2018, a popular UK magazine called The Sun released an article talking about a news story from the United States about a 7-year-old girl who was quote-unquote gang raped and tortured on Roblox. Roblox, in their typical knee-jerk response, took this as their leave and decided to finally make filtering enabled forced on every game. I say finally because the fact they didn't do this earlier is frankly bewildering, and, as I've said in previous videos, Roblox likes to only do things when the media lights a fire beneath their ass. And starting that very same July, all non-FE games were forced to be FE. Just some background on the term quote-unquote FE. Filtering enabled is basically something that you at least used to be able to choose between having checked in the workspace or unchecked. When it was unchecked, it basically meant that the client had unchecked ability to manipulate things on the server side. And of course, if Roblox could successfully patch and block exploits that abuse this vulnerability, there'd be no problem. But the thing is that stopping exploiting and cheating is always a cat and mouse game, and the mouse usually wins more often than not. Thus, many popular games at the time that had not transitioned to be filtering enabled had rampant exploiting problems. This included games like The Mad Murderer, many Adopt and Raise a Cute Baby games, and for a while, Work at a Pizza Place. Although there were many more things that contributed to this eventual forcing of FE on all games, this article was basically the catalyst for everything to come, and this leads us into the final and current period of the exploiting timeline, the post-FE period. Although during this entire period, exploits did become even more stable and more reliable, that doesn't mean that they were necessarily as powerful as they were back in the day. Consider a Roman Empire compared to the Byzantine Empire. Yeah, the Byzantine Empire saw their heights after the Roman Empire's collapse, but for the most part, it remained a weaker and smaller state than the Roman Empire ever was. Nowadays, most exploits have turned to abusing things like remote events, which are ways that the client can communicate with the server whilst FE is on, as well as, quote-unquote, using server sides. And yes, I know they're not exploits. However, they replicate the experience of the pre-FE days in many ways. Despite this though, Roblox exploiting has only grown larger, even though, like I said earlier, it's not as powerful as it used to be. However, most of the exploits you see now abuse client-sided only properties like movement, flying, no clipping, or abuse, like I said earlier, remote events within the game, which can sometimes have crazy effects, but for the most part are usually for botting or auto-farming things. Take this comparison. Before mid-2018, 2019, exploits were for fun. They were meant to literally cheat, but also they were used as an experience, as a way to see Roblox through a different light. And although that light was inherently destructive, it was a different light nonetheless. Nowadays, exploiting has almost been entirely relegated to being a tool. Yeah, there are some exploits like the Redwood Prison GUI that are just ridiculous and basically have functions that a pre-FE script would have, but those are very few and far between. But really though, the false light at the end of this quote-unquote tunnel are server sides, and even though I've said it 15 times, I guarantee you people are still going to complain and say that server sides are not exploits, and for the fourth time, I'm including them here because they replicate that experience of the pre-FE days. Although limited to mostly shitty games and the very occasional roleplay game, server sides are nowadays the only way that many of the incredible scripts that came out of the golden period can still be executed today. Now, there are games like Script Builder that do exist, or all the various script builders that are out there, but they're just not the same as using it on a crowd of random people. There have still, though, been incredible circumstances that have happened over the past couple of years, most notably, as you saw in sort of the thumbnail for this section, being Tubers93's exploiting / backdooring of numerous very popular games on the Roblox platform. However, contrary to many people's beliefs, Tubers93 is not a single person. It's actually a group managed by many prominent backdoors and server-side executors from the Vermilion community, going back to like 2015 and 2016. These users are Harkinian, Loaf, Outmoon, Snowy, and Slummy. I'm sure many of you recognize the name Harkinian as well as Outmoon, which I believe he was called just Moon in the past. According to the sort of poorly written Terminated Players fandom, Tubers93's group have been responsible for backdoors in Arsenal, which basically prompted users with a very cheap admin game pass for 80 Robux that was obviously a scam, a jailbreak backdoor that basically reset it into a default base plate, a backdoor in Koala Cafe that basically just destroyed the game and made it unrecognizable, one of the famous Little Angels copies, also known as Little Devil's Daycare, as well as the 2 hacks on Meep City, which basically just shocked the entirety of the community because of how crazy they were. However, those are about the most shocking events of this period. Not much else has really happened, especially on the micro scale like that was going on in the Golden Age. It really is unfortunate that exploiting has gone this route, but it was bound to happen anyways. I'm just surprised it didn't happen earlier. And that was just about the entire history of Roblox exploiting. It wasn't super accurate in a lot of areas just because of the nature of exploiting on Roblox, but if I missed anything, please let me know down in the comments. I would actually like to make a follow-up to this video if enough has to be said in terms of corrections or additions. So, like I said, if you are more versed in this than me, please let me know down below and I'd be happy to include some things. But other than that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.